Hi everyone, how is it going? We're back with another video. Today we're going to be going over how to paint Ultramarines in a very beginner friendly manner. We're not going to use any advanced techniques. We're going to use pretty much four paints or three paints and a wash or a shade. I'm going to sort of follow the colours that Games Workshop use for Ultramarines, which is Macragge Blue, Gehenna's Gold and Agrax Earthshade. They do use Abaddon Black. I don't own an Abaddon Black, so I'm using black from AK. Any black will do. The model is primed black, ready to go. If you have a spray can of Macragge Blue, then skip this bit and spray it blue. That'll be even quicker. I don't own it, never will, so we will do it this way. So I'm going to start off with, how do you get your paint onto the model? Well, firstly, your tubs aren't going to look like this, they're going to look like this. I've changed my paints into dropper bottles for airbrushing purposes. So we're going to get some paint. Firstly, shake. Now mine sounds a lot wetter. They're a bit thinner than what they would be from Games Workshop. So I'll put less water in. But generally speaking, we want a blob of paint like so. And we will then just simply pull the paint out. And I will bring my water just across a little bit, and we're going to just touch the bristles in, and you'll see the paint turn blue, so the water turn blue. That is usually enough water to thin. So I'm using a nice big wash brush here. It's actually a watercolour brush. It's just really good for base coating. However, if you're following Games Workshop's sort of names for brushes, just use a base coat brush here. We don't need anything with a nice point. We are not going to be doing any detail work here. We are literally focusing on getting the armor blue. And if you get some on the gun, who cares? We will sort that out later. So all you're going to do is apply your blue all over the model. And don't worry about if it doesn't look like it's going to cover in one go. You know, we certainly see on the shoulder pad, it's a bit patchy. We can see a little bit of the black undercoat showing through. That's completely fine. Certain paints cover better than others, and we will fix it later. By fix it, we'll apply a second coat. But the important thing to remember here is when you're applying paint, do not try and apply paint where you've already applied it now. So my paint was a little bit wet on that shoulder pad, so we're just going to move it around, just so we don't get any big clumpy patches. The reason is when it starts to dry and you apply moisture back to the model or the paint, you're going to reactivate it and it's going to turn chunky. It's going to come off the surface. So effectively you'll end up with chunks and bits like on the model, and it just isn't a great look. And the easy way to avoid it is just have a little bit of patience, fully let the model dry, and we'll go from there basically. But as you can see, I'm not being neat. I've got some paint on the holster of the gun, the pouches, on the backpack where it's going to be black under here, some on the purity seals. Again, we're not worrying about that too much. Again, today we are focusing on the very simple method of painting these fellas, and with the paints that you get in the starter sets, which is pretty much limited to like 4 paints, which makes you very limited to what you can do. So we're almost there with the first coat, and you can certainly see in places it is patchy and we will have to do a second coat. So I'm going to pause this, I'm going to let this dry, I'm going to do a second coat, and I'll show you what we're going to do next. So with the first layer down, this is where we currently stand. Now the colour at the minute isn't very opaque. It is transparent. You can certainly see the black through. So we're going to apply a second coat now. I've let the model completely dry. The paint is dry. We're safe now to apply a second coat. So I'll just do what I did last time. I'll need a bit more paint, but I will do everything the same. After 2 layers, we're here. Now, if yours doesn't look like this after 2 layers and you can still see bits of the black, don't worry about it. Just do another layer. It's always better to have your paint too thin than too thick. You know, if it's too thin, it just means you're going to spend a little bit of extra time doing a 3rd layer or a 4th layer. That'll be something that you learn in time. It just becomes muscle memory. So I've got a smaller brush now, a layer brush, a fine detail brush, because we're going to start doing blocking in the blacks, or anything that's not going to be blue, basically. And this may seem like a pointless step, but the thing is why we do this is it gives us consistency. For instance, this gun has got bits of blue on it. Now, when it comes to painting here, what we're going to do as our Gehenna's Gold, this will look different if it was pure black, or if you had more blue on it, it would look different. The base coat affects the top coat effectively. So we're going to get everything set as black, and then we'll move on to doing more colours. So just as before, blob of paint, little bit of water on the brush, and we're just going to pull some out. Now, when you load your brush, this is important, is I like to twist them backwards and forwards. And by this way, I can see how much paint's going on the brush. We don't want paint going near the metal bit. If you get paint in there, it's going to make your bristles go from a nice point to spreading, and at that point your brush is no good. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to pull and twist, and that brings your point to a tip. So if we were doing, line work, or we needed a thin part of the model that's rather thin, then that's how we achieve it. So again, that will become more apparent in the next few steps when we start to do the trim, because the trim is relatively thin. If you have a brush that's basically like a chisel, not a point, you're going to be in for a bad time. So all we're going to do is apply this paint all over anywhere that's going to be black. Super simple, same as before. Let the paint dry before you go back over it. If you start going over wet paint or half wet paint, you're going to bring the paint up, and that's going to cause issues. It's going to make your paint job that you've spent time doing look poor. So again, it's a habit to remember. It's something to learn. Like I said, this paint job isn't going to be detailed. I'm treating it as if it's a starter model and you only get 5 paints, because one of the paints is a base paint for the base of the model, which, yeah, rather than give you colours to paint the other models, the other parts of the models, like a brown or a bone colour for the purity seals, or a red, well, we're limited to what we can do. So like I said, I'm treating this like it's Games Workshop, from someone going in and buying their first set of models. So yeah, I'll be back when it's done. There we have it, everything is blocked in black. Now the model's starting to take a bit of shape. What do we do next? Well, let's get some other colours on. Again, we're limited to what we can use. I did check in the process that it's this isn't the right copper, but I don't have a Balthasar Gold. I have a Gehenna's Gold, so it'll look a little different, but it's the same. So metallics are different than other paints. They have a different texture. This is also looking pink, so I need to give this a very good shake. I'll be back in a second. Okay, so that paint is pretty much dead. I can't get it to mix. It's been a while since I've used it, so I'm going to go in with some Pro Acryl Bronze. It's exactly the same as what you'll be doing. I'm just using a different bottle and a different brand, but other than that, it will be the same. So again, first things first, if you're using metallics, get a second pot of water, because when you wash your brush in between paints in, or if your brush gets a bit dry, because these go sticky, you'll have to wash your brush quite often to keep it sort of fresh, so it doesn't stick to the surface sort of feeling when you're brushing. Get yourself a second pot of water. So tiny bit of water with metallics. You don't want to go over the top. Now, use different parts of the brush to help you in different areas. So for instance, on this trim, I'm not going to paint this with a tip, because if I do a tip, it's going to take 1, 2, and 3 coats just to do that bit. Use the side. So angle the model in a way that the brush tip is sitting parallel, and you can get the whole shoulder pad trim done in one stroke, rather than having to go back over when you miss bits. So use the brush, to your advantage. Now, if you make any mistakes here, don't worry. Just go back over what you've done. If it's the black you get some gold on, go back over with the black. If you get it on some of the blue, go back over with some of the blue. It's a really forgiving way of painting this. And especially if you're a beginner out there, this is probably one of the best things you can do to improve your brush control without being punished. You know, you haven't spent hours on a model just for it to be ruined by a mistake. It's a mistake can just be fixed. So my brush is getting sticky already, so I'm gonna wash it off. I'm gonna dry it so there's no water on it. It's a damp brush now. Basically, we're gonna go back into our paint. So there we go. Now we're gonna go into the chest eagle. Now this is where you need a point, because with the case of this model, the gun is very obstructive. So we'll use the tip of our brush just to get the crest symbol done. And again, and the idea is we don't want to make mistakes, because this is teaching us brush control. Having the confidence to do painting in narrow spaces with a lot of other colours around. If we were struggling, if you just take it with a pinch of salt and go, well, I'm not going to be careful because I can fix my mistakes. Sometimes your mistakes can't be fixed and you have to start all over again. So while you have the opportunity to improve, take it. Chest eagle done. So I'm going to do the other side, and I'm going to do this part of the gun and this, and that'll be it for the gold. So there we are. We're pretty much done. Now, of course, if you have other colours like reds and the other bits, then feel free to jump in and do those bits right now. But like I said, I'm treating this like it is the starter set. What we're going to do is grab some Agrex Earthshade, if I can get it open. There we go. It's not been used in a while. So washes or shades are extremely wet. Look, they're like water. So what you have to be careful for when you apply these is you don't want too much on your brush. Now you can obviously put some on and get the excess off, or if you're really quick, dab it on a piece of tissue and it'll get most of it off. Now we're limited here to what we can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shade the gun, because it will just give a little bit more interest to it, and it will get those holes in the chamber. I don't know gun anatomy, but we'll go with chamber. Even so it's not a pistol, but you know what I mean. This will give it a depth, and that's what a wash does, is it changes the color of it, and it also adds depth to the holes or the area that you're painting where there is any sort of recesses. So again, we're going to apply that over that. What we're also going to do, we're going to apply this to the chest eagle, because there's a lot of detail on there and we can get it to come out quite nicely. So we'll apply that over the chest eagle. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a pin wash, or a panel wash, I guess, is where we're going to run the bristles down the side of the gold on the blue. So this is probably the most hardest part you're going to do in this. It's just going to add depth to the shoulder pad. It'll also give it a little bit of a worn look, like dirt's collected in there, where, it would, 9 times out of 10. But if you make any mistakes, you can always just go back over with the blue. If you have a twitch and you put blue on the middle of the shoulder pad, don't worry about it. Just finish off what you're doing and try not to forget things like I just did on the top there. The thing to remember with washes as well is that you want to finish what you're doing, really. If you was to do half and half, so if I was to leave that there now and let it dry, and then I come back later and I do the other half, you're going to end up with a difference. So make sure you finish. There we go, we just had a twitch, so we've just done there, but for the sake of that, I'm just going to literally wipe it off. And it's very hard to patch up, because you sort of get a drying line where the two paints have dried at different times, and it just ruins the entirety of the model. So there we go, we're pretty much done. If you wanted to go a little bit more, certainly on the back of the model you've got all these little notches in the armor, so we can do a little bit on there. These ones that run behind the back of the leg, we can run along there. You know, if you get a bit too much on, just wipe off with your finger. We can also run down the side of the legs. We're just adding depth now to parts of the model. The holes or the circles in the armor, let's put some in there, because why not? It's the only thing we can really do. We can run it around the sort of foot. But I think we'll call it there. So for your first model, you start a set, try and aim for something like this. And again, when you're learning, you're only going to have a certain amount of paint, so you're limited to what you can do. But the main thing is you learn these techniques, because these techniques are the fundamentals to being able to become a better painter. And having discipline with a brush, you know, not to load your brush too much, not to thin down your paint too much, to have a steady hand. These are great for being able to teach you those ways. And like I said, if you make a mistake on the trim and you get gold on the blue, it's easy to fix. You know, it's not hours wasted where you have to repeat. Like I said, these are great introductory for beginners. If you're a first-time painter, if you've only been painting for a couple of weeks, or you know, you're struggling or you don't know what to do, hopefully something like this will help you. And I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to ask below, send me a message. If you enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.